Pippa Middleton, born Philippa Charlotte Middleton in 1983, grew up in a quiet village of Bucklebury in Berkshire, England. Her childhood was far from the glamorous life many associate with the Middletons today. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, were hard-working, self-made entrepreneurs who instilled in their children values of discipline, responsibility, and humility. Michael worked as a flight dispatcher before launching a successful party supplies business with Carol, who had been a flight attendant. Despite not having noble or royal status, the Middleton family lived comfortably, ensuring their daughters attended good schools, went on family holidays, and learned to carry themselves with dignity. Pippa, the middle child, grew up surrounded by love and ambition. She was bright, confident, and lively, often standing out with her charm and charisma, even in the presence of her older sister, Catherine, who would later become the Princess of Wales. Pippa's upbringing emphasized education, etiquette, and social skills, which later helped her navigate the complex world she entered once her sister's romance with Prince William became public. Unlike many children born into privilege, Pippa understood the value of effort, humility, and grace. These early lessons shaped her personality, giving her both the confidence to shine in social circles and the resilience to cope with public attention, which would come unexpectedly. As a teenager, she was already ambitious, seeking opportunities to learn and grow while maintaining the closeness of her family. Her relationship with her sister was warm, though naturally filled with comparisons. As many people watched the Middletons with interest, Pippa's life at this stage was simple but grounded. She had a strong sense of self, cultivated through the balance of family support, education, and personal drive. This early grounding would be crucial in the years ahead when public scrutiny, fame, and high society pressures would dramatically transform her life. She was not born into royalty, but she had the tools to handle attention, responsibility, and ambition, even if she did not yet realize the extent to which these qualities would be tested in the coming decades. Pippa's story at this stage shows that while she would eventually be known worldwide, her roots were firmly in the values of a normal British family, where love, work ethic, and determination formed the foundation of her character. Everything changed for Pippa Middleton in 2011, when her sister Kate married Prince William. Suddenly, the quiet life in Bucklebury was replaced by international attention and media scrutiny. Pippa found herself thrust into the spotlight as the maid of honor, walking out of the car at Westminster Abbey in a stunning white dress that captured the world's imagination. The photographs went viral, and her name was on the lips of fashion editors, bloggers, and viewers worldwide. She had not sought fame, yet it arrived uninvited, and she had to adapt quickly. Overnight, Pippa became an icon of elegance, grace, and style. Newspapers and magazines covered every detail of her life, from her wardrobe choices to her social activities. She was praised for her beauty, poise, and charm, and she became a symbol of modern British sophistication. While the attention was exciting in many ways, it also came with challenges. Pippa's life was no longer private. Paparazzi began following her, documenting her social outings, gym visits, and even vacations. Every relationship she entered became headline news, and every misstep, no matter how small, was magnified. She had to learn how to navigate the sudden fame while maintaining her identity. Despite the pressure, Pippa embraced her opportunities, using her visibility to build a personal brand. She wrote a lifestyle book called Celebrate, organized high-profile events, and occasionally worked with brands. Though she faced criticism and the relentless gaze of the media, Pippa demonstrated resilience and adaptability. She managed to remain composed, graceful, and stylish, even as her private life was scrutinized. This period of her life illustrates the duality of fame, admiration from the public, and the intrusion of privacy. It also highlights her intelligence and charm in handling attention she had never sought. Her story serves as a reminder that sudden visibility brings both opportunities and responsibilities, and Pippa navigated these with a combination of determination, skill, and poise. While she shined in the public eye, the pressures of this new reality were beginning to shape her experiences with love, relationships, and eventually marriage. Before meeting James Matthews, Pippa experienced her fair share of romantic attention, often amplified by the public eye. Her relationship with former cricketer Alex Lytton, for instance, was widely covered in magazines and gossip columns. What would have otherwise been a private affair became front-page news, with paparazzi following the couple and scrutinizing their every move. Pippa later admitted that this intrusion was overwhelming and stressful, leaving her to navigate personal matters under the constant gaze of strangers. After Alex, she was linked to Nico Jackson, a young and stylish stockbroker. This relationship, too, was observed closely by the media, who expected it to lead to marriage. The constant pressure to appear perfect, alongside her sudden fame, meant that Pippa had to manage not just her own expectations, but those of millions of onlookers. She became adept at balancing her desire for normalcy with her unavoidable public role. Yet, amid these relationships, Pippa was searching for something different, a partner who would not only love her but also understand the unique challenges of being in the spotlight without craving it. This search eventually led her to James Matthews, a man accustomed to wealth, privacy, and discretion, who offered a sense of stability and peace that Pippa had not found in her previous relationships. Meeting James was not just a romantic choice, but a decision rooted in a longing for balance, tranquility, and a life that allowed for both love and some semblance of normality, away from constant media attention. Their eventual union represented hope, stability, and the promise of a future that could accommodate Pippa's ambitions while respecting personal boundaries. In 2016, Pippa Middleton's life took another dramatic turn when she publicly confirmed her relationship with James Matthews. The news excited the media, who had been following her romantic life for years, and the public was eager to see if this would be the relationship that lasted. James Matthews, a former race car driver turned successful hedge fund manager, brought to the relationship a sense of stability and privacy that Pippa had long craved. Unlike the constant glare of the media she had experienced with previous partners, James lived a more secluded life, preferring quiet weekends and private gatherings over red carpet events and interviews. Their courtship was initially discreet, away from prying eyes, and it seemed that Pippa had finally found a balance between love and her public life. Their relationship progressed steadily, and within a year, they celebrated a grand wedding that combined luxury with elegance. Pippa wore a stunning lace gown designed by Giles Deacon, and the ceremony took place with all the fanfare that high society and royal connections could provide. While the outside world saw perfection, a glamorous wedding, happy smiles, and lavish details, the reality of life behind the scenes was more complicated. Pippa and James were two individuals from very different worlds. Pippa, accustomed to public attention and admiration, had built a life where appearances, events, and social presence were integral. James, however, valued calm privacy and a life away from constant scrutiny. This difference, though subtle at first, would become the foundation of challenges in their marriage. Their social habits were mismatched. Pippa thrived on attending fashion events, charity galas, and high-profile gatherings, while James preferred golfing weekends, private dinners, and business meetings removed from public eyes. At first, compromise seemed possible. Pippa occasionally withdrew from the spotlight, attempting to align with James's more private lifestyle, and James made some efforts to join social occasions. Yet, as months passed, the contrast between their lifestyles became more apparent. The balance they sought was delicate. Pippa's desire for visibility and social engagement clashed with James's need for peace and simplicity. While both partners were loving and committed, these fundamental differences created silent tension. To the outside observer, their marriage looked perfect, filled with elegance, wealth, and charm. Behind closed doors, however, the disparities in their expectations and personalities began to create subtle cracks. Pippa's life had always involved managing attention, building a brand, and participating in society's most visible events. James's life, shaped by business, discretion, and a preference for calm, offered little overlap with Pippa's world. This mismatch would be a recurring theme in their married life, influencing their choices, public appearances, and ultimately, their relationship's longevity. Even after marrying James Matthews, Pippa Middleton could not escape the pressures of public life. Every social outing, every event, and even casual appearances were captured and scrutinized by the press. Paparazzi followed her to charity galas, Wimbledon matches, and family events, documenting her attire, her gestures, and her interactions. This constant attention, which Pippa had learned to navigate over the years, remained both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, it offered opportunities for public engagement, brand partnerships, and social influence. On the other hand, it created stress, fatigue, and a sense of being under constant observation. James Matthews, valuing privacy and calm, often chose not to participate in public engagements, which left Pippa attending alone. Over time, this created an imbalance in their marriage, with Pippa carrying the weight of visibility, while James remained largely in the background. This dynamic was magnified by the expectations of her family's royal connections. As Kate's sister, Pippa was frequently in the spotlight by association, and the public often measured her actions against those of the Duchess of Wales. Even minor appearances at charity events or casual outings attracted media commentary. The constant comparisons, combined with the demands of her marriage and raising children, created emotional strain. Pippa's wardrobe, which had once been bright, expressive, and trend-setting, gradually shifted to muted tones, reflecting both personal fatigue and the subtle pressures she faced. Interviews became cautious, measured, and less revealing, a sign that she was managing multiple pressures simultaneously. Friends and insiders observed these changes, noting that Pippa, who had once commanded attention with confidence, seemed quieter, more reserved, and increasingly withdrawn in certain settings. While she remained graceful and composed publicly, the emotional toll was evident to those close to her. This period highlights the reality of living a life divided between personal desires and public expectations. Pippa's identity, once closely tied to her family, fashion, and public engagements, was also being shaped by her role as a wife and mother, alongside her husband's contrasting preference for privacy. The balance between visibility and calm, between public adoration and personal contentment, became increasingly difficult to maintain. Even as Pippa attempted to adapt, the cumulative pressures began to shape her choices, her social habits, and eventually, her outlook on her marriage and life in general. As time progressed, the differences between Pippa Middleton and James Matthews became more pronounced. While they shared love and commitment, their lifestyles, expectations, and social needs were increasingly incompatible. Pippa, raised in a family that encouraged ambition, visibility, and public engagement, thrived on events, media attention, and the excitement of social circles. James, however, was accustomed to discretion, privacy, and a more low-key lifestyle. He had never sought public attention, preferring intimate settings over grand social displays. This divergence created a subtle but persistent tension in the marriage. Friends and observers noticed that the couple increasingly led separate social lives. Pippa continued to attend high-profile events, fashion engagements, and charity functions, while James pursued private interests, golf weekends, and business activities. Even family gatherings often revealed differences in comfort and engagement levels. Over time, the physical and emotional distance became apparent. Their appearances together were less frequent, and public displays of closeness became rare. Photographs of them at vacations or social events, though positive, often revealed the absence of intimacy or shared connection, with no visible spark or interaction. This growing gap was not due to a lack of love, but rather a mismatch in needs and personalities. Pippa's desire for recognition, social engagement, and public interaction was not shared by James, who preferred calm, discretion, and private life. Attempts at compromise were made, but each effort highlighted the differences rather than bridging them. This dynamic, combined with the pressures of parenthood, media scrutiny, and personal expectations, gradually eroded the cohesion in their marriage. Pippa, who had spent years building a public identity and managing attention, now faced the challenge of reconciling her personal ambitions with her husband's contrasting lifestyle. The gap between visibility and privacy, excitement and calm, public engagement and private preference, created a persistent friction that neither could fully resolve. This period illustrates the often hidden struggles of high-profile relationships, where love alone is insufficient to sustain compatibility in the face of differing lifestyles, expectations, and social pressures. While Pippa Middleton maintained her elegance and composure in public, life behind closed doors was a very different story. The pressures she faced were not only about appearances, but also about identity and emotional well-being. For years, Pippa had lived under the scrutiny of media attention, public expectation, and constant comparisons to her older sister, the Princess of Wales. The fame she had gained after Kate's wedding had opened doors, but it also trapped her in a world where every action was observed, judged, and dissected. In her marriage to James Matthews, the scrutiny did not lessen, it evolved. James, preferring privacy and simplicity, could not share the same public lifestyle, and Pippa's expectations for companionship in social events went unmet. This left her navigating a complex emotional landscape, She wanted connection, shared experiences and understanding from her husband, but found herself alone in the very arenas that had once energized her. Emotional fatigue gradually set in. Pippa had learned to smile through cameras, endure invasive questions, and manage public appearances with grace, but maintaining this facade while also carrying the responsibilities of motherhood, marriage, and social obligations took a toll. Friends noticed subtle changes. Pippa became quieter, less expressive in her outfits, and more selective with her public appearances. The vibrancy that had once defined her presence seemed to fade, replaced by muted colors, understated style, and a more cautious demeanor. This shift was not just aesthetic. It reflected an internal struggle. Pippa was attempting to reconcile her public identity, her personal desires, and her role as a mother and spouse in a world where the balance seemed increasingly impossible. The cumulative effect of this tension manifested in small but significant ways. Fewer shared appearances with James, reduced social interactions, and a growing sense of disconnection that she could not openly discuss. Her silence, while graceful, spoke volumes. The woman who had once commanded attention with poise was now grappling with the emotional cost of her lifestyle, the limitations of her marriage, and the relentless gaze of public expectation. This internal struggle, largely hidden from the public eye, was a key factor in the eventual unraveling of the marriage. Pippa's story illustrates the complexity of high-profile relationships, where love, wealth, and social status are sometimes insufficient to overcome differences in personality, lifestyle, and emotional needs. It also highlights the hidden burden of maintaining perfection in the public eye while seeking fulfillment in private life. Complicating matters further were the dynamics within the Matthews family. While James Matthews was a calm, reserved partner, his sister-in-law, Vogue Williams, introduced an additional layer of tension. Vogue, a media personality and presenter married to Spencer Matthews, James's younger brother, had a more public, flamboyant approach to life. Though not openly hostile, subtle frictions between Pippa and Vogue emerged over time. Insiders reported icy smiles, minor digs during interviews, and indirect commentary on social media that hinted at underlying rivalry or disapproval. Even when comments were not explicitly about Pippa, they were often interpreted in that context. For someone like Pippa, who valued privacy, these subtle familial pressures added to the emotional strain of her marriage. Managing not just her husband's different lifestyle, but also the expectations and behaviors of extended family required diplomacy, patience, and careful navigation. Each social gathering or family event became a potential source of tension. Pippa's desire for privacy and discretion sometimes clashed with a more open, media-friendly approach of her in-laws, creating moments of unease. While she handled these situations with her characteristic grace, insiders noted that these small frictions contributed to a growing sense of isolation. She was caught between maintaining harmony, protecting her public image, and living authentically in a marriage where compromise alone could not bridge fundamental differences. These family dynamics, though subtle, played a role in the gradual erosion of connection between Pippa and James. When combined with the pressures of fame, parenting, and social expectation, they created an environment where emotional fatigue and misalignment priorities were inevitable. Pippa's story underscores the challenges faced by individuals navigating high-profile marriages, where public image, family dynamics, and personal fulfillment intersect in ways that are rarely visible to the casual observer. As the years passed, signs of strain in Pippa Middleton's marriage became increasingly evident, even if they were not immediately acknowledged publicly. The couple's shared appearances decreased, and when Pippa was photographed, James often seemed absent or disengaged. Vacation photos, which might have suggested closeness, instead hinted at separation. Two people in the same setting, but following different rhythms, with no spark of connection visible to onlookers. Public observers noted the subtle changes. Pippa's wardrobe had shifted to muted tones, signaling perhaps emotional fatigue or desire to fade from attention. She attended fewer high-profile events alongside her husband and often appeared alone, even at social gatherings where couples would traditionally be seen together. This gradual retreat was a silent signal that all was not well. For Pippa, the breakdown was quiet but profound. There were no public scandals, no shouting matches, and no dramatic media revelations. Instead, The collapse was almost imperceptible, a slow erosion of connection, compatibility, and shared purpose. The pressure of living two different lives, one public, one private, became impossible to reconcile fully. Her need for visibility, engagement, and recognition clashed with James's preference for calm, discretion, and solitude. Over time, the balance between these two worlds tilted, and neither could fully meet the other in the middle. Friends, observers, and even fans sensed a change before it was officially confirmed. The silence surrounding the